Thumbnails are the first impression that your video gives. It's the first thing that someone looks at when they're looking to click at your video. So if it's not appealing to them, then they're not going to click on your video. And that's why it's so important that you need to have the right thumbnail. It needs to be eye-catching. And essentially, it just needs to be about what your video is about. So that's why I'm going to show you exactly how you can make the perfect thumbnail, which in turn will get you more views, a better click-through rate, and it'll just push your video out there a little bit more. Now, I will state at the start of this video, there are some great options for doing this for free on free programs on the internet. However, you're never going to get the same result as if you would if you were using Photoshop. And that's just the be all and end all of it. If you're using Photoshop, you're going to get a better quality thumbnail because there's so much in Photoshop that you can do to make things pop, just to make things look better. So you're always going to get the best result off Photoshop. Now, Photoshop can be quite expensive. I'm not going to sit here and tell you how to get it for free, but all I'm going to say is if you look hard enough, you can get Photoshop for free. I'll let you guys figure that one out for yourselves, but let's dive right into it. So as I've said, we're going to be using Photoshop to make these thumbnails, and I'm going to show you how to make the perfect thumbnail for gaming. Specifically in my case, I'm a Call of Duty creator, so I'm going to be focusing on a Call of Duty thumbnail, but you can apply this same technique to different games that you want to do. So we'll jump right into it. So first thing that you want to do is load up Adobe Photoshop. Now, if you've never used Adobe Photoshop before, some of the things I'm talking about might not make much sense to you. So if you are confused, I would highly advise that you go and watch a beginner's guide, just so you know a little way around Photoshop, but I will try and explain things as good as I can as we go. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to make a blank canvas. The thumbnails, the size that you want to use is 1920 by 1080, and you can actually save this as a custom preset. So every time that you load up Photoshop, you can just click on it and it will load you straight in. And then what you're going to be sent with is just this blank white canvas. So for gaming thumbnails, specifically Call of Duty, you tend to focus on a gun in your video or something like that. I'm going to focus on it and say that we're looking at a specific gun and make the thumbnail around that gun. So what you want to do is you want to just load into the game that you're on and then select a gun that you're making your video on. So for example, let's say that I'm making a video on the M4. So the face cam's away. Do a little screenshot like there, and then once you've got that screenshot, just head back into Photoshop. But once you're in Photoshop now, you just want to drag that screenshot over from your documents or wherever it's saved, and then you've just got the picture like you would have in Call of Duty on the screenshot. So the first thing you want to do is probably the most time-consuming part of the whole thumbnail, and that is you're going to cut out this gun so you don't have any of this background in. And what you're going to do is you're going to head over to the left side down here and you're going to choose this little pen tool. Once you click that, what you basically need to do is you need to go around the whole gun and then just kind of draw an outline across the whole gun. Yeah, this is why I said this is the most time-consuming part of this whole thing, because you literally just need to draw around the whole gun. Now, once you've put a little anchor down, as you can see what I'm doing here, I'm making sort of curved lines. If you hold down your mouse click when you put the anchor down, you can actually drag it and it will make like sort of a curve thing there, so you can go with more of the curves of the gun. I would definitely always try and get slightly inside of the gun so you don't have any of the background there as well. And then basically just do this whole thing and go around the whole gun and just get that gun cut out perfectly so you've got no background on it at all. I know we've got some like numbers and stuff on the gun at the moment, but we will come to that in a second and I will show you how to fix that. So first of all, what you need to do is just basically cut out this whole gun. I'll speed this up for you guys so you don't have to watch me do the whole thing, but yeah, you kind of get the idea. Just quickly while you're watching this as well, I know a few of you will probably be asking, because I asked the same thing when I started on Photoshop. You're probably wondering how I'm zooming in like this. All you need to do is hold the Alt key on your keyboard and use the scroll wheel on your mouse at the same time, and you can zoom in and out. I hope you get better lines on your gun, obviously, because if you're trying to do it all the way zoomed out, it's not going to be very good at all because you can't really see what you're doing. So I'd definitely say zoom in, and then if you want to drag like this while you're doing it, just hold the space bar and you'll get this little hand, and then you can just mouse click and drag up and down while you're doing that, and it'll help you drag across rather than having to zoom out and zoom back in all the time. So I've just done this very quickly. I've just gone around the gun. You can do it a lot neater than this. I've just tried to blast through it just for the sake of this video. So once you've got the whole thing completed, it'll go to like a dark blue here. Once you've connected it up and it's like a full shape almost, what you want to do is you want to press Control and Enter, and then you'll get these like almost like a running snake line all the way across. Make sure on the right here where all your items are, so your background and your screenshot, you've got your screenshot selected, and then you want to press Control and J, and then what that'll do is if we just hide this layer, is it'll copy the layer that you have selected. So you've just got your gun outline here. So now I can just get rid of this one that I've hid because I don't need it anymore. So I'll just press delete and get rid of that one, and then we've got the gun layer here. Now, as you can see, this isn't perfect because I've just gone round. So there's a few things that I can clean up just to make it a little bit better before we get started. So obviously over here, I can see that because it was quite dark, I've missed out a little bit of the background. So what I'm going to do, rather than going around the whole gun again, I'm just going to cut out this little bit of the background that I've missed here. And then what you want to do, press Control and Enter again, and then Control, Shift and I, and that will actually invert your selection. So now instead of this being selected, I've selected everything outside of this. And then once again, just make sure your layer is selected on the right, press Control and J, and that will copy it without that little bit in. And you want to just go around and take away the background of anything you might have missed. So for example, like here in the little trigger, there's always a little bit of a background because obviously you can see through the trigger. So it just looks a lot neater if you just get rid of that background out of the trigger. So Control Enter, Control Shift I, make sure that layer is selected, Control J, and there we go. It just gets rid of that little background bit there. And then we'll do the same for this bit. Get rid of that. Control Enter, Control Shift I, and then Control J. And already that just looks a hell of a lot neater. Now, the one issue that we've got now is, as you can see, we've got this little gun thing from the HUD of Call of Duty. Now, what we want to do is we want to get rid of that because we want to make it look clean. Photoshop has an absolute excellent tool for that, and that is the spot healing brush, which is up here on the right. It looks kind of like a plaster almost, like a band-aid or whatever you want to call it. So just click that and then go up here if you want to change the size of it. So this little circle with the number, you can change the size of it. As you can see, you can make it massive, or you can make it really small. So I'm going to keep it this size, just get rid of the gun first. Make sure you clicked on the layer like I wasn't, else it won't do it. Just go over and then bam. It's not always going to be perfect. There are going to be like little hints, but in the thumbnail, you're really not going to notice that. You just want to, you'd notice the writing a hell of a lot more than you're going to notice a little bit of blur. So we'll just get rid of that there, get rid of that. And then I'm going to make it just a little bit smaller here, just so I can go across here and get rid of this number. You can always go over it a couple of times if it doesn't quite look right. Try and blend it in a little bit more. But yeah. You're not going to notice that anyway. So now we've got the gun without any of the HUD on it, and we've just got a plain background. So what do we do next? So the next thing you want to do is you want to come to your layer here, right click it, convert it into a smart object. What that's going to do is when you convert something into a smart object, if you then put any filters or anything on it, you're able to remove that filter really easily without having to edit undo constantly and try and do something again. So make sure you convert it into a smart layer because it will help you out massively later on. So the first thing we're going to do is we want to make these colors pop a little bit, and we can always come back to this and change it a little bit later on if we're not happy with the overall thing. But what we're going to do is we're going to come over to the top bar up here, going to click on filter, and we're going to click on camera raw filter. Now what this gives us, it gives us a lot of different options that we can play about with, and it'll play around with the overall picture. My advice to you would be, if everyone's going to have their own personal preferences on what they think looks good. So just have a play around with all of these bars and see what you like best. Most of the time, you don't want to adjust these bars too much because it will make the image look really weird. You just want to add little hints of everything here and there. So exposure, what's this going to do is going to make it either darker or brighter. So I tend to just put a little bit of exposure on just to make it that little bit lighter, because then when we come down some more of these, it will actually make the colors pop a little bit more if it is brighter. Put a little bit of contrast on there just to make the colours a little bit sharper. Highlights, this is going to highlight your whites to make them a little bit brighter. I like to put a little bit on there, and then you can make the shadows a little bit darker so everything stands out a little bit more. So make those shadows a little bit darker, and then same with whites and blacks, it does pretty much the same thing. So just a little bit of each one. Texture, this is going to affect the texture of your picture. So if you can see, it almost puts like a slight blur to it when I go all the way down, and then when I go up, it like almost makes it look a little bit more real, if that makes sense. So have a play around with it, whatever you think looks best. I always tend to put a little bit of texture on there just to make it look a little bit better than it already is. Same thing with clarity, it's going to make it look a little bit more real, or it's going to blur it out a little bit. Have a play around, whichever you think's best. I like to put a little bit of both of these on, I just think it looks a little bit better. Dehaze, I tend to just leave this at 0 because, as you can see, it just goes to extreme. It either makes it extremely black or just like it's almost transparent. So I just tend to leave that at the 0 mark. Vibrance, this is one that you can play about with. I don't tend to use too much of this, but it will make your colours pop. So obviously when you put a little bit more vibrance on, it's really going to pick up that red. So it's going to really smack that red in the face. So you don't want to put massive on because it just looks a bit weird. So I would just go for around maybe 20 to anywhere between 20 and 30 just to make that red really pop out and stand out. And then saturation will do the same thing. Look, if I turn it all the way up, that red comes right up. Turn it all the way down, just goes to black and white. So I would put even less saturation on than the vibrance. I would just maybe go up to about a 5, and that looks absolutely fine to me. The rest of this stuff you can have a play about with. It's just basically going through the colors and making it look how you want to make it look. Again, with detail, you can whack this up a little bit. I tend to whack this up to about 60, just enhances the detail of your picture. So if we press OK now, we can see that that's applied it straight away, and you'll have this little eye icon underneath your layer, and that's because we've converted it to a smart object. So at any time, if we want to take away that smart filter, we can, and you can see that's just what it looks like normal. That's what it looks like with the smart filters on. So you can see it just pops out a little bit more. Those colors are just a little bit more vibrant. So now obviously what we need to do is we need to add a background onto it. Now my best advice for this would be to go to a website called callofdutymaps.com if you're using Call of Duty. If not, then I would maybe just go to Google for the game that you are using. But for Call of Duty specifically, this is the website I love using, and I use this almost every time I make a thumbnail because it's just really, really good. So for example, if you're making it on Warzone, you can just click here, Warzone 2 Al Mazrah. If you're making it on Modern Warfare 2, you can actually go and select a map. So let's just say I want to make it on Tarak. And then what it'll do is it'll bring up loads and loads of nice pictures that you can put in the background for your thumbnail. And it just works really well. So let's say I'm going to make it on Modern Warfare 2 multiplayer. So I can click up here, Modern Warfare 2. And then what I like to do is I like to choose a map with a little bit of color in so the background doesn't look too plain. So I'm going to click on Masado Las Almas because there's quite a lot of color into the map. And then basically just choose one that we'd like. So this one's a great one here because it's got quite a lot of color in the background, but it's still quite dark, so it's not going to take all the attention away from my gun. So just copy the image, come in here, make sure you're on, and just press Ctrl-V to paste it in. And we've got the image straight into Photoshop, and this is going to act as our background. So all we need to do is just click hold of it and then just drag it underneath your gun layer. And then it'll pop straight onto your gun layer. Looks great, right? Looks like you're in the game. Looks like you're inspecting your gun. Easy. So now what I want to do is I want to change this background because at the moment, the gun still stands out because of the colors and I've brightened it up a little bit, but it doesn't stand out as much as I'd like it to because obviously the background is quite colorful as well. So I want to change that. So again, what I'm going to do is convert this into a smart object by right clicking it, convert smart object, go back to the filter, go back to camera raw filter. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to darken this a little bit, add a little bit of contrast into it. I'm just going to make it just so it's not as bright. I still want it to be a little bit bright, but I just don't want to make it as bright so it doesn't steal the attention away from that main focus that I've got, which is going to be the gun. So I'm just going to mess around with some of these sliders, and I want to keep some of the colors in there, but I don't want to make it too So as you can see there, I've just made it just a little bit darker just by playing along with some of those sliders, and it just makes it so that gun pops out that little bit more, a little bit sharper edges, which is great. And the next thing I tend to do for the background is I want to blur it slightly because, again, I want all the attention on this gun. This is what you're clicking on the video for. You're clicking on to see my loadout on this gun, so this is the thing I want you to focus on when you're looking at this thumbnail. So I'm going to click on filter again up here, and then we're going to go down to blur. You can play around with all these blurs, whichever you like. Obviously, some of them look a lot better than others. I tend to just use the Gaussian blur. So if you go ahead and click on that, you'll come up with this little dialog box here. And then you can basically just change the radius of the blur to make it more blurry. Like really, like if you go up, you just can't see anything. If you go all the way down, doesn't make a difference. So I tend to hover around between the 4 and 8 mark. I wouldn't go really above 8 because when you start going above 8, like it just looks like a lot of blurred colors. You can't really even really tell what it is. So I don't really tend to go above there. So like something like a 5.6, you can still tell that that's a Call of Duty map, but now all the focus is on that gun. I'm not looking at the map anymore. The map's just something blurred out in the background. All the focus is on that gun, which is great because that's what I want you to look at. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to change the position of the gun because, yeah, it looks great, but I want to make it so that it's just smack bang in the middle of the screen because at the moment the gun's slightly off to the right because obviously when you inspect it, you're moving it slightly to the right and you've got your magazine in the left-hand side here. So what you want to do is you want to just click on your layer here, press Ctrl and T. Smart filters applied to this layer will be temporarily turned off while you're transforming it. That's fine. Don't show again. Okay. So now you've got this whole layer selected. So basically just move it and angle it however you want. Just remember while you're angling it, this bottom bit here is going to show. So you want to make it so if you want to angle it a little bit more, you might have to make it a little bit bigger. So it's like that. Just angle it however you want it. So I'm actually going to keep it slightly to the left anyway because I'm going to end up putting something here. But all I'm doing is just making it a slight bit bigger just so it covers a little bit more of that thumbnail because the thumbnails, again, are going to be a lot smaller than this on the screen. So I just want this gun to catch the attention best that I can. So there, that looks a lot better to me already. I can see a lot more of the gun. I can see what I want to look at. So now that I've done playing about with the gun, what I tend to do now is try and make it that gun pop out. So what I found the best thing to do for that is to put something behind this gun, almost like an explosion effect. So when someone looks at it, it's like, bam, that's what you're looking at. That's what I want you to see. So the best thing to do is just to go into Google and search whatever you want. So if you want something like an explosion, go into Google and search explosion PNG and you'll get all different types of explosion. Now, a great little tip for you that I'm just going to show you now. I'm not going to use this particular one, but this is a great little tip if you do want it. Now, I'm not going to use this one, but say, for example, you copy something across and it's got a white background and you're like, oh, I can't use that one because it's not transparent. Great thing that you can do is if you just click on it here, click on this little tool up here called Object Selection Tool. As long as it's got some pretty good outlines like that, if you just drag a box around this, it will literally select exactly what you want. Like you did before, press Ctrl and J, get rid of that first layer, and bam, you have got that without the background anymore. Really, really simple. If you're trying to find an image and you think, oh, each of these have got backgrounds, that will help you get the background off it pretty much instantly. As long as it's like a solid color background like that was white, it picks it up really easily. When it's got a background, like the reason I didn't do that with the gun is because the background's all different colors. It will start to sort of not realize what the gun is and what the background is, and it won't pick it up very well. But if it's just got a solid white background, that is absolutely fine. It will work great. So I'm just going to choose one that I already have saved. It's already a transparent one. So I'm just going to choose this explosion here. So what I want to do is I'm just going to make it so you can see it from behind the gun, drag it underneath the gun like that. And then it just makes that gun pop out a little bit more. So I'm just going to make it that little bit bigger just like that. So it's like, bam, there is your gun. Now, the only thing that I don't like about this now is that this is very prominent. Obviously, it's solid lines. So all I'm going to do, just to take your attention away from that explosion and put it back on the gun, is just add a little blur to that explosion. So I'm just going to blur that up just a little bit more, maybe go to like an 8 on that. And there we go. Now you haven't got those solid lines. It puts the attention back on the gun rather than the explosion behind it, which is absolutely great. That's exactly what we're looking for. And the next thing that we want to do is we just want to add a little bit of text on the screen that basically gets straight to the point of what your video is about. So let's say that this video is going to show the best M4 loadout. So you can use whatever text you want. So for example, in the Call of Duty community, as you all know, if someone finds a gun, they're going to say it's the meta. So I'm just going to type in here. I'm going to click on this little text tool here, the one with the T. Just click anywhere on the screen. It'll auto-generate this like weird text here. Then just type whatever you want. So I'm going to type meta. If you want to change the font, just go up here, highlight it, go up here, choose any font that you want. I think Impact works really well on thumbnails because it's like really blocky. And when you make it a little bit bigger, it looks really great. If you want to change the color, just go up here once you've highlighted it and choose any color that you wish. I'm just going to keep it white for now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make that a little bit better. Oh, just select that again. I'm just going to tilt it to the side a little bit. I want it about here. That's where I'm going to have it, just so you know exactly what I'm talking about. And then what I'm going to do, just to make it stand out that little bit more, I'm actually going to bring it underneath the gun. And I'm just going to cover it with the gun ever so slightly, just so it looks like that gun is on that top layer still. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this to a smart object again, so I can remove any of the filters if I need to. And then what we're going to do is we're going to double click on this layer and you're going to come up with this box, and it's got loads and loads of different things that's going to change your text in certain ways. Again, the best thing to do is just have a play about with it and see what each one of them does. So first off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a stroke on it, which is basically just an outline around the text. So as you can see, I've got it set to black, so it's just put a black outline around my text. So you can have that on the outside, you can have that on the inside, which looks a bit weird, or you can have it on the center so it goes the same inside as it would outside. I'm just going to keep that on the outside for now. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, 25, maybe 30. Yeah, we're going to keep that on 30 for now. So it just gives that outline, makes the text stand out that little bit more. And then you can just have a play around and see what you think looks good. So like you can add like a satin glow to it, which is almost like a shiny effect to it. Change the color, around and give it sort of a satiny glow. We're not going to bother with that today. You can put a grading on it so it goes up and down like that, which I think looks really, really good on certain ones. So I'm actually going to keep it on this grading here. I'm going to go for like an orange into the yellow color. I think that looks really nice. And then what I'm actually going to do, just to make it look like it's a little bit 3D, we're going to put a drop shadow in there. So I would say change your blend mode over to linear burn, keep it on black, and keep your opacity up to 100. And then, depending on the size of your text, you're going to have to play about with the distance and size yourself and just see what looks good. But you can see, if you can see underneath the lettering, you're starting to get this shadow appear. So I'm just going to make it so there's a little shadow just behind it, so it looks like it's almost coming off the page a little bit. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller, and as you can see, when I made it a little bit smaller, the shadow starts to come out a little bit more. So I'm just gonna change that a little bit now and just make it so the shadow doesn't quite come out as much. And there, that's absolutely fine to me. And while we're putting the shadow on that, we're actually going to go ahead and put a shadow on the gun. So do the same thing, double click the layer with the gun layer, click drop shadow down here, and it'll put a little shadow on your gun as well, so it gives that more of a 3D effect. So again, just play around with your size and distance on the gun. About 1313 looks perfect here. It just gives it that little bit of a shadow so it looks like it's 3D, looks like it's coming off the page almost. Looks absolutely great. Another thing that you can do is if you've got quite a lot of text on your background and you want it to stand out a little bit more, you can actually put a stroke onto the gun. Obviously, don't go as extreme as that. You put like a little subtle white stroke on it like that, then it sort of just makes the gun stand out a little bit more from your background, so you're looking straight at that gun. At the moment, because I haven't got that much going on my background, I'm going to take the stroke off and just leave it like that. So now we've got the text on there, we've got the gun on there, so all I'm going to do just to finish this off is I'm just going to put a little arrow that I've got off Google and just basically point the point the text at the gun, just so you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, the best thing to do for these thumbnails is just really dumb it down, just make it so, like, look, this is what I'm talking about here. Here you go. So I don't really like the arrow in front of the text. I think that just looks a little bit goofy. So I'm going to drag it below the text and the gun. And I'm just going to move it here so you can see the arrow pointing straight at the gun. Make that a little bit bigger. And then what I'm going to do to make that stand out is I'm actually going to go ahead, put a stroke on there, a white one. I'm going to make that, I'm going to keep that at 5 actually. I quite like that. Press OK. And then what we're going to do is convert that to a smart object. And that will basically make that into an image now. So I can't take that stroke off at all. There's no little eye effect here. So if I double click it again, I can now put another stroke on top of it. So now I'm going to go ahead and put a black one on there instead, make that a little bit bigger, say 20. And now I've sort of got this effect where it's a little white outline and then the black outline, and it's pointing straight at the gun. So this is a really good way just to make your gun stand out that little bit more. And right now I would be happy, and I think that's a great thumbnail to upload. It's really eye-catching. You've got a lot of color on there. People are going to see that. They're going to see the wording and think, I want to click on that. I want to see what gun this guy's using. You can add other little things to it as well to make it stand out a little bit more. So what some people like to do is you can get the Call of Duty Warzone sign. If I drag that up here, you can just drag that in the top corner just so people know what game it is. So you could just stick that up here like that. If you wanted to, you can add all sorts of things. You can add a little kill counter if you got a specific amount of kills in a game to bring people across. You can add anything that you want into this thumbnail just to make it pop that little bit more. The only thing I would say to you is don't go overboard on it. You want the main focus of your video to be right dead in the center so people see it straight away. They know what they're looking at, and you just want people to click on that video. Go through thumbnails of videos similar to yours and see what gets clicked on the most. See what people like looking at, see what people's styles are, and just get a bit of a hint off them and see what works the best, and then try and create something similar to that but in your own style. So once you've got this finished, you're going to need to export it into a document that is supported by YouTube. So if you go to File and then you want to click Export, and then you want to go down to here to Save Web Legacy. You want to keep it on JPEG because that is going to be the smallest file, because YouTube does have a limit to what the thumbnail size can be. So keep it on JPEG, then you want to keep it on very high, maximum sometimes, depending how much stuff you've got on that thumbnail, it will be too big. So just keep it on very high. And then just click save it into your folder. You'll just be able to drag it straight across to your thumbnail. If this video did help you today, guys, make sure to drop a like on the video. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. And if you would like to see more videos like this, like editing videos, how to edit videos, how to make YouTube banners, how to make logos, anything like that, let me know and I will try and make a short tutorial for you. Everything I do, I've taught myself how to do, because obviously I'm a small creator. I haven't just got money to throw at people to make things for me. I have to learn how to do it myself. And if I want to compete with the big dogs out there, I've got to learn how to do it to the very best that I can. So if you guys want to learn how to do that too, make sure you subscribe to this channel and I'll chuck some more content out there for you. Like I said, comment down below and let me know if there is anything that you would like to see. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.